Hey guys, it's Nicole here from Bake Toujours and welcome to my video on how to successfully make vegan macarons. I have been on a quest to find a product that could make vegan macarons good and consistently good and not completely hollow. And I've finally found that product and I wanted to share everything I know about it thus far. So as we know, if you've made macarons before, you know that typically they are made with egg whites. You whip up these egg whites to form this beautiful meringue, and then you slowly deflate after you add in your dry ingredients to make this almond meringue cookie. So the thing with vegan macarons is you need to take out those egg whites and replace it with something. And I had previously been doing aquafaba, which is a product like the juices from your chickpea cans, or you can use other types of beans, but it's the juice, that like liquid substance that's left in your can after you drain your chickpeas. So you can reduce that down to make it a little more stable and then go on to whip it, and it's beautiful. The meringue itself, when you're using aquafaba, turns out gorgeous, and it's like a miracle. It's really cool to watch, but I could still never get my macarons to turn out. They would always be hollow and they wouldn't look like regular macarons. So I was on the search for something more stable and I finally found Gerbet. Gerbet is a French person who is credited for the French version of macarons. And so vegan gastronomy is where you can buy this off of. It's potato protein, and it has some other things in it too. So this says potato protein, and then the other big thing that's in here is xanthan gum. So if you don't use this particular brand of potato protein, then you need to also buy xanthan gum and just add a sprinkle of that when you're trying this. Another big brand of potato protein is, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, but Sosa, S-O-S-A. I hear they have a good line as well that has a fairly good taste too. They're continuing to refine these products, but it's potato protein isolate, and that is what you want to look for. But this specifically is Gerbet, and I've absolutely loved it so far. I've made it 3 times. The first time, all my macarons were still lopsided. So I kind of tweaked the recipe, went back to my original recipe, and then went from there. And I found a wonderful ratio that has produced no lopsidedness whatsoever, very full shells. So let's get into vegan macarons using this Gerbet mix. So to get started, one of the biggest things you need to know is that you have to hydrate this potato protein isolate before you get started. So I think their website says at least 4 hours you want to hydrate. I got away with 2 hours, so it's really up to you, but you can do 4 hours, you can do overnight hydration. It's not like it's going to overhydrate, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so let's get into the actual recipe and then we'll go to method. So the recipe entails 108 grams of water and then 12 grams of this potato protein. You're gonna want 100 grams of sugar and then 130 grams of almond flour and 135 grams of confectioner's sugar. This has been a great mixture of my recipe and using the ratios of Vegan Gastronomy's French macaron recipe as well. So we've got the 108 grams of water mixed with your 12 grams of potato protein or Gerbet mix, and that's going to include about 5 grams of your sugar that's already scaled. So you'll have 95 grams of sugar left to mix in with your hydrated potato protein later. So let's get into method. Once you mix your potato protein with your water and 5 grams of your sugar, mix that really well for about a minute or 2 and then store it in your refrigerator to hydrate. So once you have your ingredients scaled out and that potato protein is hydrated, then just make sure you also have your piping bag ready to receive the batter with the piping tip and then your baking mat of choice. Sanaz from Bake Unique on Instagram helped me with which baking surface is best. She is a pro at vegan macarons and has been a huge help during this process of me learning how to use potato protein. So big shout out to her. And then I also wanted to just say she said that Teflon works great for her. So I used Teflon here and I had no lopsided macarons. So if you do have Teflon sheets that are glossy, I do suggest using them for these vegan macarons. It's just going to help them rise nice and evenly. It doesn't mean that they're the only way to have nice feet. I still need to work more with silk pats, and then parchment is usually a good choice as well. They just don't keep the circular shape as nicely, but they will develop your feet. So here I have my Teflon sheets, my piping bag, and my colorant that I want to use. Here I'm using a Master Elite from the Sugar Art to color my macarons. The potato protein is so dark that I haven't gotten great light colors yet, so I just go with darker colors in general that will deepen and look great at the finish. So just beware of the colorant that you're using and make sure it is not going to compete with that dark potato protein. It does lighten up as you whip it, but it's not gonna be as white as, say, your egg whites from your meringue. Once you have all that prepped and you're ready to start, then you're going to pour as much as that mixture that you have made of your potato protein into your mixer. So I get usually about 115 to 116 grams of that mixture of water, potato protein, and sugar. Once all of your potato protein mixture is in your bowl, add all of your sugar into that bowl, and then over a pot of steaming hot water, we're going to whisk the potato protein and the sugar till it's dissolved. So we're actually using a Swiss method here for our meringue. So we're going to whisk that potato protein until the sugar's dissolved. Once it's all dissolved, you can feel it through your fingers. Transfer your mixing bowl to your stand mixer and just start on medium-low speed, gain some volume. If you're using a powdered color, add your powdered colorant right then. And then just whip until you've developed nice volume, and then you're gonna turn up to medium, a couple more minutes, and then medium high. So basically it's just like a regular meringue. You just wanna slowly add volume and strength, and also just gently increase in speed as you whip. If you have a gel paste colorant that is vegan, you can also add this towards the end so it doesn't aerate and get super light in color. It's up to you. You can also leave these without any colorant, whatever you want for your macarons. But again, I use the Sugar Art, and you can use my code BAKEToujour to get 15% off your orders if you are so inclined. Once your potato protein is really developing some nice volume and is holding into the whisk nicely, you can slow down your mixer carefully and then stop mixing. You want a stiff peak, but the stiff peak on this potato protein is so different, especially when using the Swiss method. I don't know if the heat does something, but I haven't gotten my meringue super stiff with the Swiss method for potato protein. So it's going to have a peak, but in the bowl, it won't really hold all around like your regular egg white meringue. So don't look for super stiffness. Like aquafaba is nice and stiff too, and it's not gonna be like your egg whites. So you're just gonna wanna look for something that looks more like this. And once you've reached this stage, it probably takes about 8 minutes or so, depending on the power of your mixer, you're going to carefully put in your dries. I have previously sifted these dries and whisked them together to form a homogeneous mixture. So here I'm adding in my dries carefully in a few additions, and then because it's not very stiff, super carefully folding in those dries without deflating much. And then once they're all in, then I feel more comfortable kind of squeezing out and doing the macaronage process, which is like pressing out the air a little bit and folding and tumbling the batter. The flow of the batter turns out to look like this. It definitely does look different from your egg whites, so you try not to compare exactly, but you're gonna want to have it flowing like this. It breaks a little bit more frequently for me. Put this into your piping bag, pipe like normal. I'm piping on this Teflon, but underneath I have a silicone mat for the sake of a template. And then once I'm done piping all of my macarons on my Teflon, I remove the silicone mat underneath so that there's better conduction of heat when I'm actually baking, that the heat doesn't have to go through a whole silicone mat. It's gonna hit the Teflon first and have my macarons rise really nicely. Here is a big change for my usual method for macarons. I'm using the oven dry method. Preheat your ovens to 200 Fahrenheit. I usually do this when I am whipping my potato protein up. I'll turn it on and preheat my ovens. So I have two ovens. I've been using my toaster oven and my electric wall oven. Preheat whatever you want to 200 Fahrenheit. And then once you're done piping, just pop in your macarons for 2 minutes and take them out, and they're completely dry and ready to go. Then turn up your ovens to 250 Fahrenheit. Once your ovens have reached that temperature, pop those macarons back in and bake for another 20 minutes or so. 18 to 20 minutes should do. You want them to be able to pop off your mat. It's hard to tell sometimes, so I recommend trying one, maybe feeling if they feel pretty sturdy at the top. If they do, then you can take them out of your oven and then let them sit for about 15 minutes before removing the rest. Don't tamper with too many of them because they do have a tendency to take a little bit longer to solidify inside. The biggest challenge for me with these vegan macarons have been the bake. So for the first few times that you're baking these vegan macarons, I suggest babysitting those ovens. It's annoying, but once you get it down, you won't have to do that. So my biggest tip is to keep your oven low. My goal is to keep my oven around 250 to 265 Fahrenheit the entire time, right? So mine goes up and down. I watched it. It would hit 300, it would hit 310 Fahrenheit. So I would have to either stick a wooden spoon in there to vent my oven to make sure a little bit of heat would go out. When the oven was super hot and my feet were starting to develop, I rotated my pans as well to keep from having lopsided macarons. So I do suggest around the 7 to 8 minute mark when you start seeing feet to rotate your trays and then close up that oven door again. If your oven shoots up in temp, feel free to stick a wooden spoon in there. You just don't want to get it too hot because that's when we get our exploding feet and weird looking feet, our lopsided feet, or cracking of our vegan macarons. So you need to be careful with that. Once those macaron shells are completely cooled, then you can fill them. Here I did a strawberry buttercream with a dairy-free substitute for butter. For the butter, I used unsalted Violife butter, which is fantastic. It's a great substitute. It holds really nicely, as you can see here when you're piping. It just keeps its shape, and at room temperature, it's not gonna melt and be a mess. The full recipe of the strawberry buttercream is in my ebooks, and I also have a link to the raspberry version of this in a video from the past. I'll link above. You can click on that above for the full recipe. So here I actually decided to use some jam as well. I used a strawberry buttercream with a cherry strawberry currant jam. And in order to keep the shell from getting too soft, I added a little layer of buttercream on the bottom to keep a little barrier so it doesn't get too wet. Once you've filled your macarons however you desire, then store them in an airtight container in the refrigerator overnight if you're gonna enjoy them the next day. If it's gonna be any longer than a day or two, you can put them in the freezer, filled or unfilled, and enjoy when you're ready to eat them. Vegan macarons in general seem to be great 24 hours after. You don't need extra time to mature them. When I tried aquafaba in the past, my vegan macarons would get soft really easily. These potato protein macarons seem to have a longer shelf life, which is great, and the taste is good as well. There is a slight tang at the end, but you know what? Like if you are vegan and you're used to eating dairy-free, this is gonna be such a treat. I have been on this quest to make good vegan macarons because of my husband's boss. He eats vegan and I really wanted to be able to give him something that he can enjoy. And he very much enjoys them. So I think when you're not comparing them directly to a egg white meringue with, you know, regular butter, buttercream, they're gonna be super enjoyable. They're an amazing bite. They have that crunch just like you want and that chewy center. These were completely full and I was just so happy with them. So I hope you guys enjoy this recipe and that you can bring some really quality vegan macarons to whoever in your life chooses to eat in this manner. So happy baking, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week and let me know in the comments below if you have questions or anything about the vegan process. I will try to get back to you as I also keep venturing down this road of using the Gerbet mix. All right, thanks so much for watching, you guys. Have a wonderful rest of your week.